only 1.5% to 5% of Catholic clergy are engaged in child abuse. Would the panel speculate how they think that percentage works for other churches or on the atheist side of the line?
Thank you very much. Child abuse, question over here, please. The person with the microphone. Yep.
I have a question for Charles Moore and Richard Harries. Do you think that if your subtle, scholarly, nuanced brand of religion was the norm, Richard Dawkins and A.C. Grayling wouldn't have had to write their books? The point is, I attended a lecture at a top British university last year given by the head of Answers in Genesis, Ken Ham, who was not only preaching scientific ignorance, he was also preaching right-wing bigotry from the grave of Jerry Falwell. Why shouldn't we get angry about that?
Okay. I'm going to ask the side to come in first on those.
Can I just say on that...
Can you speak to the microphone?
I don't believe that I was arguing for a subtle and nuanced brand of Christianity. I think I was simply arguing for a mainstream traditional form of Christianity. And, of course, you're right to attack people like the person you mentioned. But I don't think we should allow ourselves to be marginalised by thinking we're a sort of clever, supermodern version of Christianity that's being put forward, at least by me. This is just what has been put forward by mainstream churches throughout history. And one of the things that I think is quite wrong about the Dawkins Grayling argument is to characterise, it's the other way round from what you're saying. They're taking people like mad creationists and they're trying to project that onto the whole of the Christian faith for 2,000 years. That seems to me a total misrepresentation.
Richard?
I think we need to emphasise, of course, there's a very great deal of bad religion around, and bigotry, wherever it appears, needs to be attacked. But the debate tonight is not about bad religion. It's a question of whether the new atheism has slipped into a kind of fundamentalism. That is what the debate is about. Atheism, faced with certain forms of religion, is a kind of purification, is a necessary purification. And I made it clear at the beginning, there are many forms of atheism I deeply respect.
If God did exist, how come he's letting Richard Dawkins and Anthony Grayling say what they are saying?
I think to help us all to think.
Good. Help us to think, both of you.
Well, yes. On this question, which the questioner raised about the good and the bad kinds of religion, I think he's absolutely right. It would be marvellous if all religious people were like our two panellists here tonight. And it may be right that deserves the title mainstream in some historical period. I rather doubt that. But the fact is, it doesn't today. And if you go to the United States, as I often do, the huge majority of religious people are just the kind of religious people you don't want. And that's the reason why I found it necessary to write The God Delusion. The question is absolutely right. There would have been no need if everybody was like Charles Moore and Richard Harries, but unfortunately they're not. To pick up on the Cluedo jibe that Charles Moore raised, and that the Reverend Green did it. In America, he's not even called the Reverend Green. He's called Mr. Green. He's not allowed to be called the Reverend Green because in America it's inconceivable that a clergyman could possibly do anything wrong.
Anthony.
I mean, just to revert to the rhetorical point about the name-calling which is going on, fundamentalist atheists and so on, the truth of the matter is that people who are troubled by the criticisms levelled at them really do set the bar very, very low indeed as to what they will accept in the way of criticism. So if they're spoken to rather robustly, people who criticise religion are said to be intolerant of religion, as though a physicist who doesn't believe in magic is intolerant of magic. It's an attempt to try to displace the criticism by attacking the criticizer. I mean, one thing that was very noticeable about Charles Moore's contribution this evening was that it was very largely an ad hominem attack on Richard Dawkins, not really an attack on the ideas.
Anthony, have you ever had a religious experience?
No, but the nearest thing that I ever came to it was when I fell in love with my wife.
And she's here tonight. I think that certainly deserves a round of applause. Charles and Richard, have you ever had an atheistic experience? Just for...
Yes, of course, because it's a phase that you go through when you're a teenager.
Ah, okay. Wow. Okay. We're going to have a question. There's a lot of questions over here. I'm very keen to get some questions down over on this side here, but gentlemen here first. Good. And then over here, please.
Professor Dawkins, you are arguably the world's leading apologist for atheism, and you have been invited on several occasions by arguably the world's leading Christian academic apologist, Dr. William Lane Craig, to engage in debate. I would like to know why this is not an example of the new atheists doing what Lord Harries has described as avoiding the strongest possible arguments from the opposition.
Okay,
thank you.
That's a very straight question. Over here now, and then at the back, please. Let's take question number 2 at the back, please. Yep.
Atheist fundamentalism is not a new phenomenon. If Professor Dawkins had read history of Russia and China, he would know that atheism conducted programs of violence against people of faith. Have you a comment to make on that, please, Professor?
That's a monstrous suggestion.
That's a monstrous suggestion, but we're going to hold back in just a second. The monster will just be suppressed while we have the third question over here.
Professor Grayling talked about the many strands of unbelief, and Charles Moore talked about the subtleties of Christianity, and I wonder whether Mr. Moore would like to comment on the idea that there's not much subtlety in calling everybody that's an unbeliever an atheist.
Okay, we'll take Richard first on why you're not going to, apparently prepared to debate against that lady. Then we'll come over here and we'll finish up on the question there about Stalin's gulags.
I have always said when invited to do debates that I will be happy to debate a bishop, a cardinal, a pope, an archbishop. Indeed, I have done both. But that I don't take on creationists, and I don't take on people whose only claim to fame is that they are professional debaters. They've got to have something more than that. I'm busy.
And if she said she was busy too, you would say...
It was a he, actually, but...
Oh, oh my goodness, what a boob. Over here, moving straight on, yeah.
What do you want me to do? Which one?
I'd like you to come back on that second question, if you can recall it.
No.
Charles.
Well, I think the lady over there was asking a question about how did I describe unbelievers. I certainly wouldn't describe all people who don't believe as atheists. Obviously not. And nor would I just treat all atheists in the same way. The point of this argument tonight is about a particular character of atheism which has decided to assail Christianity without trying to, and faith more broadly, without, I think, honestly trying to understand what it is, and it's that to which I'm objecting.
Thank you very much. And now the response on Russia. Richard.
The implication was made that the monstrosity, the awfulness of Stalin's Russia, Mao's China, had something to do with atheism. These were dreadful people having dreadful political philosophy which they ruthlessly enforced in their countries. It is incidentally true that they happened to be atheists. It's incidentally true that Hitler, Stalin and Saddam Hussein all had moustaches. But it's nothing to do with either their moustaches or, in the case of Stalin, his atheism. Hitler wasn't an atheist.
Okay, serious point here, Richard. What would then be your response to somebody who would say that Muhammad Atta and his 18 colleagues on 9/11 had nothing to do truly with spirituality and with love of mankind?
It had everything to do with their Islamic religion. You know absolutely for sure, nobody heard it, but we all know what their last words were. They were motivated by religion from start to finish. We have their testimony to say so. There's absolutely no serious doubt that they were motivated by their Islamic faith to do that terrible deed that they did. I won't say that it's spiritual. You can easily say it's not my kind of religion. Of course it's not. But that's not the